Okay, now that we have looked at the structure and the functions of the plasma membrane, we're going to look a little bit more closely at how things move from the outside of the cell to the inside of the cell, or from the inside of the cell to the outside of the cell. Remember that our entire bodies are made up of all of these different types of cells. So in order to perform all of our body functions, moving oxygen around to our different tissues, removing waste products that are formed from our metabolic processes. All of that is done through these processes of transportation and moving things across the plasma membrane of each of our cells. So movement can happen in a couple of different ways. The first kind of most simple example is called simple diffusion. In our image here, it's just called diffusion, but I want to make sure that it's called simple diffusion because that's going to be very different from facilitated diffusion. And simple diffusion is the random movement of substances from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. So if you have a high concentration of a substance on the outside of the cell, like this example, it's going to naturally flow by simple diffusion towards the inside of the cell. And a really common example of this is oxygen, travels by simple diffusion, and carbon dioxide will also go through the cell by simple diffusion. And that's really important because those two substances, oxygen that we need to fuel all of our muscles and our metabolic processes, and then carbon dioxide being that waste product, those are things that we're moving around a lot. So luckily for us, simple diffusion is a form of passive transport, which means that it does not require any energy. So when oxygen moves or carbon dioxide moves from high concentration to low concentration, we're not using any energy to do that. That's based solely on that concentration gradient. That's simple diffusion. On the other hand, we have facilitated diffusion, which still involves moving substances along the concentration gradient. So it's still going to go from higher concentration to lower concentration. But because some molecules are water soluble, that means that they can't interact with the lipid bilayer. So they need a little bit of help to get through, and that help comes through these carrier proteins. So that's one example of a type of protein that can be embedded in the plasma membrane or in that lipid bilayer. And a really, really common example of facilitated diffusion is osmosis, the movement of water. Water, we know the kind of old saying, water and fat don't mix, or water and oil don't mix. And what they really mean is that water and lipids don't mix. So water cannot move directly through by simple diffusion. It needs to have a carrier protein to help it out. And we'll see that in just a second. But water is another big example of something that we are moving around really, really frequently. So we need to have an easy way to do that. And this is another example of passive transport. So not requiring any energy to move that. Some molecules, though, we don't want to move from high concentration to low concentration. There are some examples of bodily functions that we want to actually create a concentration gradient. And in order to do that, we're going to want to be able to move some substances from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration to build up that concentration gradient. And to do that, we have to use energy. In our energy form, we hopefully remember, is adenosine triphosphate, ATP. So we're going to be adding energy. This is an example of active transport because it requires energy to fuel this. This is also an example of facilitated transport because we are going to require the use of a carrier protein to do that. Examples of ions that we might want to build up concentration gradients and use this form of active transport would be sodium, We're going to see that. And potassium. We fuel something called the sodium-potassium pump in our nervous system that keeps the concentration gradients so that we can fire electrochemical impulses and so that our nerves can fire. So we'll talk about that more when we get to the nervous system. Let's look at osmosis in a little bit more detail. Osmosis is the movement of water molecules, so specific to water, through the semi-permeable membrane from a region of high concentration to low concentration. So this is passive transport because we're not using any energy. We're going from high concentration to low concentration, but it's facilitated because we need the use of this aquaporin, that protein channel embedded in the plasma membrane that's going to allow water to travel through. Water can't move by simple diffusion because our water molecule and our lipid molecule can't interact with one another. What happens though when the concentration of water on the outside is the same as the concentration of water on the inside? Osmosis still happens, but it's going to happen at the same rate in both directions to maintain that equilibrium. So if the concentration of water on the outside and the inside of the cell is the same, osmosis still happens. You're just going to have an equal number of water molecules moving out as you have moving in. Okay, let's look a little bit about how osmosis, or this movement of water, affects our cells. And we're going to look specifically at red blood cells for this example because they're a good example of how easily osmosis can affect the shape and the function of a cell. And this is all due to something called tonicity. Tonicity is the ability of an extracellular solution, so the fluid outside of the cell, to make water move into or out of the cell. So when we talk about tonicity, we are only talking about the solution on the outside of the cell. And we can have three different scenarios here. I'm going to draw my three beakers. I'm not a great computer artist here, so bear with me. And we're going to draw a red blood cell in the middle, that biconcave disc shape. And we're going to put each of our imaginary cells here in a different concentration. So our solution on the outside can either be hypertonic, isotonic, or hypotonic. So we'll make our first solution hypertonic. Hypertonic. That means hyper, more than, right? So the concentration on the outside of the cell is greater than the inside of the cell. So if there's, we'll call all of these little dots sodium, like salt. So there's more salt on the outside than there is on the inside. We'll give one on the inside. But the concentration gradient higher on the outside than on the inside. And that means that by osmosis, facilitated diffusion, passive transport, water is going to move out of the cell. Water is going to move out of the cell to try to dilute the concentration on the outside. If enough water moves out of the cell, then we're going to have the cell completely collapse and deflate, and that is called crenation. So if you lose enough water out of your cell will actually collapse, deflate. That's called crenation. Our other example over here, we could have a hypotonic solution. Remember, all of these tonicities are referring to the solution on the outside. So if we have hypotonic, that means our concentration is higher on the inside of the cell than on the outside. And that's going to cause water to naturally flow again along the concentration gradient into our cell. So water is going to flood into the cell. And that means it's going to blow up like a balloon. right? We're going to be adding water to the cell. If enough water gets added to that cell, then we're going to experience something called hemolysis. Hemo meaning blood cell, lysis meaning split. So that cell is actually going to explode and burst open. Then we have our third example of isotonic solution. Isotonic solution. So we've got the same concentration inside as we have outside. And as we hopefully remember from our last slide, that means that we're going to have an equal transfer of water from the inside to the outside. Osmosis is still going to occur. It's not going to stop. It's just going to be no overall change in that cell, in the shape or the function. So let's look at that again. Hypertonic, water is going to be leaving the cell to dilute the concentration gradient on the outside. So we're going to experience this shriveled up cremation of our cells. Hypotonic, the concentration of solutes is greater on the inside of the cell. So water is going to flow naturally into the cell to try to dilute that and make it the same as the outside, which is going to cause our cells to expand and blow up like a balloon. And if enough water gets added, we're going to have this hemolysis happen where the cell will actually burst open. Both of these examples, hypertonic and hypotonic, negatively affect the function of that cell. If the cell is crenated, all shriveled up, it can't transport oxygen and carbon dioxide. If the cell is exploded or is blown up like a balloon, it can't transport oxygen or carbon dioxide. So those cells are not going to function properly. So we try to maintain our cells in this isotonic condition, where the concentration of solutes on the inside of the cell is the same on the outside of the cell, and we have osmosis happening in equal rates in both directions, keeping our cells in that nice, happy, biconcave disc shape, ability to transport all those important products, oxygen and carbon dioxide. We can look at those underneath a microscope as well. Here's our shriveled up crenated cells in our hypertonic solution. Ooh, our big, bulging hypotonic solution, adding all that water to our cells. And this cell here, look, all of that has ended up on the outside. That one has undergone hemolysis and exploded. And then in the middle, we have our very happy isotonic solution, keeping our cells the proper shape so that they can perform at optimal function. And of course, if you need a visual example, you can always find that on Pinterest. Somebody had a lot of time on their hands and they were able to crochet sad little cells in hypertonic solution, all crenated, worried cells in our hypotonic solution about ready maybe to undergo hemolysis, and our happy cell in the isotonic solution. Solutes the same on the inside as on the outside. So what does that mean? How can we use this in real life? Like any topic in biology, the study of life, of course we can. The majority of people that are admitted to the hospital are given an IV drip to prevent them from becoming dehydrated. So when we're awake and alert and we're dehydrated, we're simply thirsty and we can drink water. But drinking water allows that water to go through our digestive system and our bodies make it usable. They add the solutes that we need. But what would happen if we just injected pure water into our bloodstream? What scenario would that simulate? Hopefully you said that it would be a hypotonic solution because there are no solutes in pure water. So it would cause that water to really flood our cells and we would undergo a lot of hemolysis. So that is why the typical IV uses a 0.9% sodium chloride or salt solution. And that's mimicking the solutes inside the cell, creating that isotonic environment so that we're able to hydrate the body without causing damage to our cells. Okay, I'll see you in part 3.